A reading from the book of Judges. The children of Israel offended the Lord by serving the Baals, abandoning the Lord, the God of their fathers, who led them out of the land of Egypt. They followed the other gods of various nations around them, and by their worship of these gods provoked the Lord. Because they had thus abandoned him and served Baal and the Asherah, the anger of the Lord flared up against Israel, and he delivered them over to plunderers who despoiled them. He allowed them to fall into the power of their enemies around about, whom they were no longer able to withstand. Whatever they undertook, the Lord turned into disaster for them, as in his warning he has sworn he will do, till they were in great distress. Even when the Lord raised up judges to deliver them from the power of their despoilers, they did not listen to their judges, but abandoned themselves to the worship of other gods. They were quick to stray from the way their fathers had taken, and did not follow their example of obedience to the commandments of the Lord. Whenever the Lord raised up judges for them, he would be with the judge and save them from the power of their enemies as long as the judge lived. It was thus the Lord took pity on their distressful cries of affliction under their oppressors. But when the judge died, they would relapse and do worse than their ancestors, following other gods in service and worship, relinquishing none of their evil practices or stubborn conduct. The word of the Lord. Responsorial Psalm. Remember us, O Lord, as you favor your people.
Remember us, O Lord, as you favor your people.
They did not exterminate the peoples as the Lord had commanded them, but mingle with the nations and learn their works. Remember us, O Lord, as you favor your people. They served their idols, which became a snare for them. They sacrificed their sons and their daughters to demons. Remember us, O Lord, as you favor your people. They became defiled by their works and wanton in their crimes. And the Lord grew angry with his people and abhorred his inheritance. Remember us, O Lord, as you favor your people. Many times did he rescue them, but they embittered him with their counsels, yet he had regard for their affliction when he heard their cry. Remember us, O Lord, as you favor your people. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, O Lord.
A young man approached Jesus and said, "Teacher, what good must I do to gain eternal life?" Jesus answered him, "Why do you ask me about the good? There is only one who is good. If you wish to enter into life, keep the commandments." He asked him, "Which ones?" And Jesus replied, "You shall not kill. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. You shall honor your father and your mother, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself." The young man said to him, "All of these I have observed. What do I still lack?" Jesus said to him, "If you wish to be perfect, go sell what you have and give to the poor, and then you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me." When the young man heard this statement, he went away sad, for he had many possessions. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Good morning. I think we have the teachers with us today. So, blessings on you as you approach this new year. You know, as we gather, we hear the somewhat familiar story of the rich young man. And there's actually two tellings in the Gospels. There's the one we hear today from Matthew, which is a little shorter than the other one that we hear in Mark. Not only is it shorter, but in Mark, it's much more intense. Because in Mark's Gospel, it says specifically, Jesus looked at the young man and loved him. He looked at the young man and loved him. Matthew doesn't say that. He just says he looked at him and said, "If you would be perfect, sell what you have, give to the poor, and follow me." Mark says the same thing, except he looked at him and loved him. And then he spoke his word of invitation. Now, what I find intriguing about this story of the rich young man is when he asked what he must do, the first response is Jesus saying, "Keep the commandments." Which ones? And interestingly, the only commandments Jesus mentions are the ones that involve us. He doesn't speak about honoring God or putting God first. He speaks about every commandment. It speaks about how we relate to one another, which seems to indicate that we can be a nuisance at times. We can be a bother to each other. And so we have to be willing to put our energy not just up, looking toward the heavens, but out from ourselves to one another. And embrace each day with a willingness to bring our best self to all we encounter this day. That's the first half. For Jesus, in keeping the commandments, he's not as concerned about the first three as the last seven. And then he says simply, "If you would be perfect, sell what you have, give to the poor, and follow me." You know, what that says to me is standing at the heart of discipleship is the simple reality of surrender. I don't earn it. I don't necessarily deserve it. I simply surrender. In this case, it was epitomized by his willingness to sell his possessions and give them not to Jesus, not to Father Lincoln, not to Father Connole, but to the poor. And that's why it really epitomizes surrender. And that's what salvation is. It's simply surrendering to the wonderful promise that we are beloved of God. Not because of what we do, but simply because of who we are. So there's two things that work, I believe. One is put your energy in keeping the commandments horizontally toward your brothers and sisters. And then remember, salvation is not about what we do, but who we surrender to.